US President Donald Trump has officially confirmed that he reimbursed his lawyer, who paid a porn star to hush up her claims of an affair. The president's lawyer, Michael Cohen, has previously said he paid Stephanie Clifford $130,000 of hush money shortly before the 2016 election. Ms. Clifford, who goes by the name Stormy Daniels, alleges that she and Mr. Trump had sex in a hotel room in 2006. A new financial disclosure filed yesterday shows the president paid Mr. Cohen over $100,000 of unspecified expenses in 2016. Jordan, how serious is this for the president, I should say?
Well, I guess it'll depend on to what degree it reveals his lying. So I can't tell yet. I mean, part of me thinks it might be better for the political system in general to leave the private lives of the leaders alone. I mean, that's more of a proclivity in Britain, I think, to leave the private lives of politicians alone. But if it indicates well, family life, anyways, it seems, compared to the United States.
Right, but what does it say about Donald Trump?
Well,
I mean, he
says he has
denied,
strange taste in women.
Right,
that would be the starters.
And you talked about lying and whether there is an allegation here that he has lied. If he denies having had an affair, why pay hush money?
Well, that's a complicated problem, because sometimes people pay hush money so that a problem just goes away, even if there isn't guilt involved, although it does raise the specter of some sort of involvement. Sometimes it's easier to pay someone who's harassing you to go away than it is to do anything else about them. Now, I don't know whether that's an appropriate tactic or not, but I can certainly see why it might be one that beckons to you.
What does it say to you about Donald Trump?
Well, I think in the end, with these things, it's always the cover-up that gets you. It's not so much the deed, it's the trying to sort of lie your way out of it. But the big thing will come down to whether he's breached federal law with these funds coming from his campaign funds. And sometimes, it's a bit like the Al Capone thing, sometimes it's a technicality that actually can get you into a lot of trouble. But the fascinating thing about Stormy Daniels is that she is a woman that will just not be silent. She's a sort of female version of Trump in many ways, this sort of blonde, larger-than-life, I'm not going away, I'm not going to be.
No, she's taking him on in that sense.
She's absolutely taking him on. And also there are other sort of more malign parts to her story as well. She alleges that somebody sort of threatened her and her daughter's safety in a car park at one point. Again, if there's any links back to, Team Trump on this would look terrible. But what strikes me fascinating about her, no matter how much she gets abused, she gets a lot of abuse about her profession, the fact she's an adult actress and all this thing, she is a woman who is not going away.
Right, making it difficult for Donald Trump. Would you have voted for Donald Trump if you'd been able to vote in that election?
I don't know. I mean, when I was watching the American election, I lived in the States for quite a long time, so I have a real affinity for the U.S. And when I was watching the election, for me it was a foregone conclusion during the entire process that I would have voted for Clinton, because I thought she had the experience to handle the position. But the closer the election got, the more I could feel a part of me think, yeah, if I walked into that voting booth, I could imagine in a fit of pique checking Trump and saying to hell with it. And so, what would
have caused the fit of pique if you said you identified with Hillary Clinton at that time? What changed then? What would have changed at the last moment?
I'm not happy with the tilt of the Democrats towards identity politics as a substitute for their conventional, focus on the valid concerns of the working class.
OK, so you're unhappy with the identity politics that you say is associated with the Democrats in this particular case and Hillary Clinton. But doesn't Donald Trump indulge in identity politics to just the same degree, just different groups and different identities?
Yeah, but I would say that the sort of identity politics that Clinton engaged in cuts a lot closer to the bone for me because of my position in academia and the overwhelming predominance of the radical left amongst the humanities and social sciences.
OK, well, that's your personal experience. But let's just take a look and a listen to Donald Trump talking here.
We have people coming into the country, or trying to come in. We're stopping a lot of them. But we're taking people out of the country. You wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people. These are animals. And we're taking them out of the country at a level and at a rate that's never happened before. And because of the weak laws, they come in fast. We get them, we release them, we get them again, we bring them out. It's crazy.
Right, just to explain, this is Donald Trump talking about illegal immigrants, but describing them, some of them, as animals. I mean, isn't that sort of rhetoric identity politics, just a different kind of identity politics?
Well, I think you could make a case for that. I think it does appeal fundamentally to the distinction between conservatives and liberals, however, at a deep level, because conservatives are much more concerned with the integrity of borders and the fortification of structures within them, and liberals are more concerned with loosening the strictures between things. So I don't know if it's identity politics exactly with him so much as just appealing to his constituency.
But does that mean that you are sort of saying there is a case, a legitimate case, for calling some illegal immigrants animals?
Well, I suppose it depends on who he's referring to. If they're mass rapists, for example, then there might be a case. I mean, there are things that people can do that are more barbaric than anything an animal might conceive of. So I'm not justifying that, but I don't know precisely what he was referring to.
Well, I think Donald Trump plays a very base game. I think he does actually, ironically, pushing back against identity politics, I think he does do his own form of identity politics. And a lot of identity politics, you could argue, is about creating division. And he is the master of creating division. And his rhetoric around immigration, referring to human beings as animals.
Or Mexicans as rapists.
Well, the Muslim ban, as somebody from a Muslim background as well. But also at the same time failing to tackle things like gun crime. You know, there's a huge proportion of shooters in America who tend to be white men, but he's never prepared to take them on or challenge them in any way as well. His game is always division and how he can pit people against each other. That's how he sort of does reasonably well at the moment.
All right, let's leave it there for the moment. Now, the maximum stake on fixed odds betting terminals will be reduced to £2 under new rules announced by the government. At the moment, people can bet up to £100 every 20 seconds. And it's been claimed the machines can lead to gambling addiction. The Association of British Bookmakers has warned that there could be job losses and argued the problem of gambling addiction was a lot more complicated than just cracking down on the machines. Let me bring our other guests in. Aisha, first of all, do you back what the government is doing?
Yeah, I do. It's absolutely the right decision. And also I do pay tribute to Matt. He's campaigned really long and hard for this. And to take some mea culpa, I think the last Labour government did make a mistake by, deregulating this to this degree, and there was a proliferation of these sort of machines. But I think to Mark's point about the economics, I think there is a knock-on benefit which you might not be readily able to capture immediately in terms of, if you look at the sort of opportunity, cost and damage of a lot of the effects of gambling, it is a blight on people's lives. It can affect their mental health. People can become so addicted they sort of lose their jobs. You know, there is a big kind of
social... So there's a cost to society.
There is a cost.
Although it hasn't worsened since the rates of problem gambling were the same in 1997 when Labour came to power. So it's not obvious that actually the gambling liberalisation under the Labour government from 1997 onwards worsened the problem in aggregate.
The ease at which people can get into, as you said about the casino, you're right. I mean, it is a wee bit, like if we wanted to go and do a bit of gambling, we'd have to put a bit of effort into it. We could go into a betting shop really, really easily and get onto one of these machines. So there are some natural obstacles.
Not so much on your computer, which you can switch on immediately.
We'll come on to the online.
Can
I just talk about addiction? I mean, listening to this discussion, do you accept and agree with Matt that the way these particular machines are devised leads to a much quicker route to addiction?
Yeah, I think the clinical literature on that is clear, and the machines are designed precisely for that purpose. They use a kind of reinforcement strategy that can hook people in very rapidly, and the problem with them often is that they're people who have cognitive impairments or who are elderly, who are suffering from cognitive control problems, are particularly susceptible.
Right, so would you support regulation, tighter laws to restrict and, on this case, obviously bring the stakes right down?
Well, it seems to me at least that bringing the stakes down helps minimise the potential for harm for the populations that I just described.
What about banning the machines altogether?
Well, that's a more complicated issue. I don't know enough about the particulars of these machines in the context of the gambling industry here to say anything particularly intelligent about that.
Right. I mean, the thing is, the machines aren't being banned. So it is just about the stakes coming down. So I don't quite see what the problem is broadly in terms of people still being allowed to gamble.
I think it will effectively be a ban. My understanding of the monies behind this, that if you cut the stake by that much, the profit margin collapses, these machines become non-viable. So you can actually effectively ban products and services by fixing prices, even if you haven't actually legally prohibited them. So most likely my judgment would be these machines will be ripped out of the high street, and most likely, unless we're actually going to ban the ability to go to a computer and find a roulette wheel, then we're only banning a particular type in high street.
The question is, in part, like, is there any social good that these machines produce? You know, you could argue that the government needs to allow and regulate gambling because that's the least amount of harm that can be done, given that people are likely to do it anyways. But it's very difficult to make a case that there's any social good that's associated with gambling.
Right.
A lot. I would say. I mean, I spend most of
fun.
I spend most of my annual leave in Las Vegas. I love it. I get fun out of it. Right. It produces jobs for croupiers and bar
you can
staff
obviously control yourself.
Well, the overwhelming majority of people can. So gambling per se, I think, is a good. It is a social and an economic good. It brings fun to a lot of people, and it creates a lot of jobs and economic activity.
Matt, do you agree with Mark that actually it is an effective ban? I mean, would you like to see the government be even tougher when it comes to these kinds of machines?
It's an effective ban on the roulette content. The machines will still be slot machines and they'll still be in betting shops, B3 content, what's called B3 content. But when the bookies brought these machines in, they did so in a very much a legal grey area. They said that because the server that determines the result of each spin is outside the premises, it's the same as betting on a horse race. So therefore, that's how they sort of Trojan horsed roulette and casino games into their shops in the first place. And then it was legitimised in the 2005 Gambling Act, and the minister said, well, look, it's £100 a spin, that's quite high, it's quite unusual. If there's evidence of harm, then we can reduce the stake.
All right.
And it has taken a while, but we're back to that.